Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive. And today we're going to be taking a look at the life of Jenni Lee,
Jenni Lee.
a former adult film star
Okay.
whose story takes a pretty wild turn.
Yeah.
We've got a whole bunch of articles and interviews here,
Interesting.
and this one's a real head-scratcher.
It really is. It's fascinating how somebody can go from like the spotlight, right, to
Right.
just completely disappearing off the map.
Yeah.
And in Jenni Lee's case, the reality of what happened is way more interesting than anyone could have ever guessed.
You think you know where the story's going, and then bam,
Yeah.
total left turn.
Totally.
So we know that Jenni Lee, born Stephanie Sidora, found fame in the adult film industry in the early 2000s.
Mm-hmm.
But what's really interesting is what one of our sources revealed about her motivation for entering that world.
Okay.
Apparently, it wasn't just about the money or the fame.
Right.
There was something else going on there.
Exactly. According to an interview from 2004, Jenni Lee mentioned that she was really drawn to the idea of creating like a persona,
Oh, wow.
becoming someone different from her everyday self.
Interesting.
It was almost like she was looking for an escape from her own identity.
That is wild.
Yeah,
It really adds like another dimension to her story.
it does.
You know, it wasn't just about seeking fortune or attention.
Mhm.
There was a much deeper thing going on.
Yeah.
And it makes you wonder,
Yeah.
was that desire to transform herself somehow connected to her eventual disappearance?
It's a really good question.
Yeah.
And speaking of her disappearance, by the late 2000s, she was completely gone from the public eye.
Oof.
Nobody knew where she had gone or why.
It was like she fell off the face of the earth.
It really was.
And for years, people could only speculate
Yeah.
about what had happened.
Right.
Some people thought that maybe she'd gone into hiding. Others whispered about darker possibilities.
Right.
But the truth, as we now know, was even more surprising.
So in 2019, Jenni Lee was discovered living in a network of tunnels beneath Las Vegas,
What?
a community known as the Mole People.
I had no idea.
Yeah. These tunnels have a pretty fascinating history.
Okay.
They were originally built for flood control, but they've become a refuge for people on the margins of society,
Wow.
seeking shelter from the harsh desert conditions and really from the realities of life above ground.
These weren't just some random underground hideout.
No.
There's a whole history there,
Hmm.
a whole community that sort of developed over time.
Exactly.
What was life like down there for Jenni Lee? I mean, talk about a change of scenery.
Well, one source describes the tunnel conditions as incredibly challenging.
Okay.
Limited access to clean water and sanitation, constant darkness, and the threat of flooding during storms.
It's a far cry from the world of glamour and excess
It is.
that Jenni Lee had once inhabited.
Yeah.
It's mind-boggling, is it? To go from that kind of lifestyle to living in those tunnels.
Yeah.
What would make someone make such a drastic change?
Well, that's where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
Jenni Lee herself spoke about her reasons for choosing this life. In an interview after she resurfaced, she described the tunnels as a place where she could finally be herself, free from the judgments and expectations of the outside world.
So in a way, it was like she was fulfilling that desire for transformation that she had expressed years earlier.
Right.
But this time, it wasn't about creating a public persona.
Yeah.
It was about stripping away all pretense and finding a sense of authenticity
Yeah,
in the most unexpected of places.
exactly. She talked about finding solace in the simplicity of tunnel life and the sense of community among the other residents.
Interesting.
It was a complete rejection of the materialism and superficiality that she had come to associate with her past.
That's a really powerful statement.
It is.
That someone could find peace and a sense of belonging in an environment that most people would consider incredibly harsh and isolating.
It really challenges our assumptions about what makes a good life, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And it makes you wonder, what was it about the tunnel community that appealed to her so deeply? Was it the sense of anonymity, the escape from the pressures of her past, or was there something more, something about the people themselves that drew her in?
You know, one of the sources we have is a sociologist who has spent years studying these underground communities.
Okay.
And they point out that for many of the residents, it's the shared experience, the mutual support that creates such a strong bond.
Mm-hmm.
These are people who have often been rejected by mainstream society.
Right.
And in the tunnels, they find a place where they can be accepted for who they are.
Yeah, that makes sense, especially for someone like Jenni Lee, who had experienced so much scrutiny and pressure in her past life.
Exactly. And there's another really fascinating aspect to this
Right.
that I found in a psychological study on the impact of extreme environments on human behavior.
Interesting.
The researchers found that individuals who choose to live in these kinds of unconventional settings often develop a heightened sense of resilience and resourcefulness. They learn to adapt to challenging conditions, to rely on each other for support, and to find creative solutions to everyday problems.
That's really insightful. So while the tunnels might seem like a harsh and unforgiving environment,
Right.
they also foster a unique kind of strength and community. Yeah. It's almost like a crucible,
Yeah,
forging a different kind of character.
that's a great way to put it. And it really challenges the common perception of these communities as simply places of despair or dysfunction.
Right.
There's a whole other side to the story.
Yeah, we tend to focus on the negatives, the lack of basic amenities, the dangers, the isolation. But we forget that even in the most unlikely of places, human beings can create a sense of home, of belonging, of purpose.
Absolutely. And Jenni Lee's story is a powerful testament to that human capacity for adaptation and resilience.
Now, of course, when news broke that Jenni Lee was living in the tunnels, it sparked a media frenzy.
Of course.
People were fascinated by her story, trying to understand how this former star could have ended up in such a dramatically different world.
There was a lot of speculation.
Oh, yeah.
Some saw it as a tragic downfall, a sign of mental breakdown or addiction.
Right.
Others viewed it as a radical act of rebellion, a rejection of societal norms and expectations.
It's interesting how her story became a kind of Rorschach test,
Yeah.
reflecting people's own values and beliefs about success, happiness, and what makes a meaningful life.
And it raises important questions about the ethics of media coverage, especially when it comes to individuals who are experiencing homelessness or mental health challenges.
It's a delicate balance, isn't it?
Yeah.
On one hand, you want to tell these stories to shed light on the complexities of human experience, but on the other hand, you have to be careful not to exploit or sensationalize the lives of vulnerable individuals.
Precisely. And it's important to remember that behind every headline, behind every viral video, there's a real person with their own unique story, their own struggles, their own hopes and dreams.
All said. And while Jenni Lee's story is certainly extraordinary,
Mhm.
it also reminds us that the issues of homelessness, poverty, and mental health are far more widespread than we often acknowledge.
Yes. The mole people community is just one example of a much larger societal issue.
Right.
There are countless individuals living on the margins, struggling to survive in a system that often fails to provide adequate support and resources.
It's a call to action for all of us to do more, to advocate for change, to support organizations that are working to address these issues, and most importantly, to treat each other with empathy and compassion, regardless of our circumstances.
And there's a quote from a social worker who works with homeless populations that I think is really powerful.
Okay.
They said, "We often focus on what people lack: housing, food, income, but we forget to ask what they have: their resilience, their creativity, their stories."
That's so powerful. It's a reminder to look beyond the surface to see the humanity in every individual and to recognize the strength and dignity that exists even in the face of adversity.
And speaking of stories, one of the most compelling aspects of Jenni Lee's journey is the way she describes her experience in the tunnels. She talks about the beauty she found in the simplicity of life, the joy in the small moments, the profound connections she made with the other residents.
So for her, it wasn't just about escaping her past.
Right.
It was about embracing a whole new way of being,
Yeah.
a way of life that resonated with her on a deeper level.
Exactly. And it speaks to the fact that our definitions of success, happiness, and fulfillment can be so diverse, so individual.
Yeah.
What one person might view as deprivation, another might see as liberation.
It really throws a wrench into our conventional notions of what makes a good life, doesn't it?
It does.
And it reminds us that sometimes the most profound transformations occur in the most unexpected of places.
Absolutely. And Jenni Lee's story is a powerful example of that. It challenges our assumptions, it expands our perspectives, and it ultimately invites us to question what truly matters in life.
And, as we've been going through all of these sources,
Yeah.
one thought keeps coming back to me.
Okay.
We've talked a lot about Jenni Lee's journey. But what about the journey of those who knew her before? Her family, her friends, the people who knew Stephanie Sidora before she became Jenni Lee. It makes you wonder what it was like for them when she vanished
Right.
and then reappeared years later living in those tunnels.
Yeah, it's a side of the story we
Yeah.
don't often get to see.
Exactly. One of the articles mentions that before she disappeared completely, Jenni Lee actually tried to reconnect with her family,
Oh.
but it didn't go so well.
Mm,
There seems to have been a lot of hurt and misunderstanding on both sides.
that's heartbreaking. It adds another layer to her story, doesn't it? You can imagine the emotional turmoil for everyone involved.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it reminds us that these kinds of choices, even when they're about self-discovery or liberation,
Right.
can also have ripple effects on the people we love.
It makes you think about the balance between pursuing your own path
Yeah.
and honoring the relationships
Yeah,
that are important to us.
exactly.
Yeah.
So while Jenni Lee's journey might seem like a solitary one,
Mhm.
it's clear that it's also intertwined with the lives of others.
And it's a reminder that even as we celebrate individual journeys of self-discovery, we also have to acknowledge the complexities and potential heartbreak
Yeah.
that can accompany those choices.
It's a powerful reminder that there are always multiple perspectives to consider,
Right.
and that sometimes the most meaningful stories are the ones that unfold in the shadows,
Mm-hmm.
the ones that don't make headlines.
Exactly. And it just underscores the importance of empathy and understanding,
Yeah.
not just for those who make unconventional choices, but also for those who are left to navigate the aftermath.
Well, I think we've covered a lot of ground here.
Yeah.
Jenni Lee's story is one that stays with you. It's a story about transformation, about the search for authenticity, about the unexpected places we can find meaning and connection. And it's a story that challenges us to look beyond the surface and to approach each other with a little more compassion and a lot more curiosity.
It's a story that invites us to rethink our assumptions about success, happiness, and what it means to live a truly fulfilling life. And it reminds us that sometimes the most profound journeys are the ones that take us far from where we expected to go,
Yeah.
leading us to places that we never imagined existed.
And for those of you listening, if Jenni Lee's story resonated with you, I encourage you to learn more about the mole people communities and the systemic issues that contribute to homelessness and marginalization. It's a complex issue, but one that deserves our attention and understanding.
Because ultimately, these are stories about human resilience, about the power of community, and about the enduring search for connection and belonging.
Well said. And on that note, we'll wrap up this deep dive. Thanks for joining us. And until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.
If you enjoyed this video and want to dive deeper into more cases like this one, make sure to subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to like the video if you found the story compelling, and share it with your friends and family who might be interested in true crime and mysteries. By subscribing, you'll stay up to date with all our latest content and join a growing community of curious minds exploring the most fascinating cases. Click the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Your support means everything.